My name is Jeremy Clark, and this is my informative speech, and this is my audience. Today I would like to talk about some basic chainsaw maintenance. How many of you ever cut down a tree with a chainsaw, or used or seen a tree cut down with a chainsaw before?
I have.
It is a very neat experience, and if you haven't, I would highly recommend going out and seeing it. There are 3 basic techniques that I would like to go over today. The first is how to sharpen a chain, the second is how to clean an air filter, and the third is how to store a chainsaw properly. In sharpening a chainsaw, there are 3 ways to tell if your chain even needs to be sharpened. The first is the amount of pressure that you need to apply to the chainsaw when you're making a cut. The more pressure you need to exert on the saw, the duller the saw is, and it needs to be sharpened. The chainsaw should do the majority of the work for you, as it should auto-feed itself into the cut. The second way that you can tell that your chainsaw needs to be sharpened is by the flake that it shoots out when you're making a cut. If it shoots out a fine dust-like powder, then the saw needs to be sharpened. The saw should be shooting out big chip-like flakes. A third thing that you need to look for on a chain is that if it gets a shiny sheen to it. If it gets shiny, then you probably have a chrome plate wear and you may need to replace your chain immediately. When sharpening a chainsaw, you need to place your saw on a good sturdy workbench. You need to acquire the correct size file for the size chain that you have. There are many different size chains on the market, and you need to make sure you get the correct file size for your chain. If you use the wrong file size, you could damage your chain and render it useless. When sharpening the saw, you need to sharpen both sides of the chain equally to allow the chain to cut straight and not cut crooked, as this will allow your saw to be ineffective. When sharpening the chain, you need to sharpen the chain from the inside to the outside at a 25 to 35 degree angle. The angle depends on the type of chain that you're using. Now that your saw is nice and sharp, let's make sure that the air filter is nice and clean and allows the engine to run properly. In order to check the air filter on this style and model, remove this back plate cover. To inspect the air filter, you just inspect it visually. If there's any dirt or dust or grime on it, it needs to be cleaned. There are 2 main ways to clean an air filter. The first way is to use compressed air. In order to do this, you need to remove the air filter from the carburetor so you don't blow dirt and dust into the carburetor. To do this, you need to remove these 2 screws and pull the air filter off, and then you can use compressed air to blow it out. The second way, which is a more effective way, is to remove the air filter again from the carburetor and submerge the air filter in a soapy water solution. After it is soaked for about 5 minutes, you need to squeeze as much water as you can out of the air filter and allow the filter to air dry. Once the air filter is dried, you need to place a dab of oil on the filter so that it will aid in the collection of dirt and dust on the filter. Now that your air filter is clean and your saw is sharp, you probably used your chainsaw for a full season. Once it is no longer feasible to use your saw, we need to follow a few techniques to prepare it for proper storage. In order to do this, you need to remove the bar and chain assembly, which is accomplished by removing these 2 nuts and this plate. Once the bar and chain have been removed, you need to store the chain in an airtight container, which could also be a Ziploc bag, and fully submerge the chain in bar and chain oil. Once the chain has been properly stored, you need to properly store the bar. After you remove the bar, you need to coat it in oil and wrap it in paper and store it in a cool, dry place. Once you have stored the chain and the bar, you need to completely empty the fuel out of the fuel system. In order to do this, you need to remove this cap and drain all of the fuel out into the appropriate container. Once the fuel has been removed, you need to start the engine and completely drain the fuel lines and the carburetor so that the fuel doesn't sit in there for the long duration. Just following these 3 simple and easy techniques could save you time and money, allowing your saw to be ready to use at a moment's notice, and can keep it out of a workshop and avoid costly repairs.